So just a few things to think about here. One is, give your organization a grade, you might say. How well does your company leverage its investment in both creating project budgets and detailed estimates? So the idea there is whether you have an estimating department of 5, 25, or 50, the investment in what those people do day in and day out in terms of creating budgets or detailed estimates for projects, whether you think of it this way or not, you're in the data creation business. You build buildings, you build pipelines, you might build oil refineries, you might build wind generation plants, but at the end of the day, you're creating a lot of information about those projects and a lot of information that relates to cost. And then the issue is, do you use that costing information beyond just the project it was created for, or is it largely, created for that project, put in a 3-drawer filing cabinet in a job folder, and that wall or room of 3-drawer filing cabinets just keeps getting bigger and bigger over the years, but you don't really leverage that data. In a very similar way, many of the customers that I talk to actually, their overhead and the size of their project management department for managing those projects to completion is equally as big as the annual investment in creating those budgets and estimates to begin with. And in a very similar fashion, what do you do with the actual cost that you capture on those projects in your project management software and whatever tools you might use to actually capture that data, whether it be Prolog or Proliance or Excel or whatever tools you might use to also manage that project to completion? The same question exists. What do you do with that data after that project is complete? And then how well does your organization today benchmark what is believed to be a final estimate or detailed estimate prior to that project budget being communicated to the client, or even before that? If I'm an estimator, I want to benchmark that project against a group of projects that are similar in scope, as Holly said earlier, to kind of do a sanity check and look for variances that are beyond an acceptable range. And it could be that I want to run through that process before even communicating that final estimate to the chief estimator within the organization, let alone the client. So the reality is there's a wealth of valuable information stored within those past project estimates, as well as those as-built costs that you have out of your project management solution. And not using that information means reinventing the wheel with each new estimate. Harnessing that information means more time to craft your estimate, and by craft your estimate, many customers I talk to would love to have more time to do value engineering, to explore options and alternatives for a project, but they're backed up against a time commitment in many cases and don't have enough time. So if we can shorten that time in which it takes to even create those budgets or feasibility estimates or whatever term you want to use, then that's a huge win. I can't tell you how many customers I've talked to who've begun to really track and realize the investment in creating, I'll call them feasibility budgets. And when I say feasibility budgets, we're talking about estimates that are needed in the absence of detailed scope and design. In many cases, a design firm hasn't been engaged, and yet I've got a client that's looking for a number. And if you're in the estimating department, the unfair reality is whatever number you first communicate, that client will never forget that number. They will always measure your final estimate against that original number that was communicated. So that's just a reality. So companies spend a fair amount of time creating that feasibility number because they know they're measured against it. Before I dive into the product, I know just from looking at the list of registrants that we've got a wide range of roles on this call. We have estimators, we have chief estimators, we have some folks who spend more of their time managing projects. We have some IT folks on this call. One of the things I like to do invariably before we just dive into the software is just look at some technical stuff. And that is, Model-Logics, and this is a critical point to understand, Model-Logics is a standalone application within the Trimble family, meaning some people have looked at Model-Logics knowing that it was developed by WinEst and thought, well, the only way I can use Model-Logics is if I'm using WinEst as my estimating tool. That is absolutely not the case. So while Model-Logics is tightly integrated with WinEst, I would say at least half of the users today of Model-Logics are using some other estimating tool to create their project budgets. And we developed this tool on purpose so that we could actually allow companies that were using other tools that don't have a solution for their cost experience to take advantage of Model-Logics. So as long as whatever tool you're using can publish a report of your cost broken down by whatever custom work breakdown structures you utilize, you can then use that data in Model-Logics in that back-end database. The database engine is MS SQL, and obviously the reason for that is it's got to be able to support lots and lots of data and be able to do it quickly and efficiently, hence the database back-end. It does not, we get asked all the time, does Model-Logics require a dedicated server? There's nothing in Model-Logics that requires a dedicated server. Space requirements are going to vary. The application itself does not require much space on that server. However, every company would need to kind of understand how many project budgets, how far back, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, how far back are you going to go in terms of populating that database with data, and any associated documents or scope information that you might also want to attach to those project budgets that would further explain the details behind that budget would be a critical piece to any, a tool that's going to be used where you're researching and searching for past work.